Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of, movie reviews, because I still haven't come up with a more interesting name for this little series. But anyway, we're going to be talking about the most recent Insidious movie, Insidious: The Last Key. Now, as always, to save you some time, I will rate whether to go see this movie, to wait, or don't even bother with it. And for this one, I'm going to say I'd say wait it out. Unless you're a huge fan of the series, wait it out. Wait till it hits the dollar show, or even wait till it comes to DVD. It's nothing too spectacular. I feel like the Insidious series has kind of overstayed its welcome. I mean, yes, the very first movie in the series was absolutely terrifying, and it sparked a whole wave of horror that I never anticipated to happen. And in fact, this wave of horror even became a little annoying afterward, with overwhelming jump scares and predictable plots. Not saying the first Insidious was exactly predictable, but nowadays it is, because everyone else is using the same formula. But with Insidious: The Last Key, it's definitely not the best in the series. I mean, there were some pretty cool visuals. There's some pretty cool nods to previous entries in the series, but nothing too spectacular about this film. So now I'd like to get into the more in-depth review. I'd like to start with the plot synopsis, what the film's kind of about, and as you expect, it's pretty run-of-the-mill for a ghost story, but it takes place in Elise's, the psychic from all the previous movies. It's her childhood home. So she gets a phone call after having nightmares about this horrible home of hers, and it's an individual asking for help with getting rid of a spirit. At first, she's like, no, I can't help you. I'm sorry, because she found out it was her childhood home. And eventually she calls the man back and says, well, I guess so. So they go back to her childhood home and decide, okay, it's time to get rid of some spirits. From there, you already know that everything goes completely south. And that's pretty much where the originality ends. The story's pretty run-of-the-mill, but it's all about execution with these movies. And I'd have to say, with Insidious: The Last Key, the execution was alright. It wasn't horrible, and it wasn't the best they could have done. I feel like they were rushing to get this movie out and get this movie to the very end, because the end is where they put a lot of their creative effort into, I guess you could say. And that obviously shows. They have a strong setup for the conflict, but all the way through the whole space of the movie, they try to fill it in with some cheesy jokes and corny, backstory that has almost no relevance to the story. They're just trying to get to the end of this movie. They're just trying to justify it being a feature-length film, and unfortunately, that does show in this movie. Now, the cinematography work it's nothing special, but it's also nothing terrible either. They do the average Insidious jump cuts to prepare for a jump scare, zoom in, zoom outs, track cameras, I think they're called, where they follow the actor and such, and it's pretty run-of-the-mill for these type of films, and they execute it well. And I think where the Insidious franchise really holds its place in horror to this day is the tension it's able to build, the sheer tension that these movies are able to produce to us viewers. And in this movie, it was there, but only for brief spurts. If you look back at the first Insidious, you have these points in the movie where you have breaks, but other than that, you're just completely tense almost the whole film. You're wondering what's around every corner. Nowhere's safe. I mean, there was one jump scare during a day scene. And if you know anything about a lot of paranormal films, day means safe. You don't have to worry about the ghosts or anything like that. But in this movie, there was only brief periods of tension, and they don't deliver on that tension, I guess you could say. You expect this massive jump scare or massive creature exposure, and it just turns out to be random ass loud noise. And that's a lot of problems modern day horror movies fall victim to, unfortunately. Now, as I said, the plot is pretty run-of-the-mill. It's pretty basic for a paranormal movie, which, I mean, you can only do so much with the same wheel, You can only put so many different spokes on this wheel before it becomes too much, I guess you could say. And what Insidious did was create an original film. It's the reason why you see all these paranormal films like Conjuring or Silent House or any of the previous Insidious entries and many more. Insidious basically reinvented a franchise for everybody else to follow. But the previous two films in the Insidious series have just not delivered. It has become a tired old man who's complaining about all these kids being on his lawn. And the lawn in this case is the supernatural, paranormal, horror genre. I personally feel like Insidious should have left it at Chapter 2 instead of trying to make money off of people getting freaked out by jump scares. I was totally good with the story until Chapter 3 came out, and Chapter 3 just... it was a prequel that wasn't executed well, and I was very disappointed with it. I was so excited to see the psychic's point of view and see the battles she faces before she hits the main conflict of the first film. But they just did not deliver on this. Same thing with The Last Key. You see all these fantastic trailers for this movie. I mean, the trailers were absolute. That was the first trailer I could not watch for a movie because it was honestly a freaky trailer. Now that brings me to the next the visual aspects, I guess. They did a good job with coordinating colors and used the right setting, the right cramped corridors that you subconsciously hate, and they did well with the set building and the color coordinating and all that good stuff. So there's no complaints there. But, oh my goodness, the very first portion of this movie was horrible. The acting was horrible. They had a few child actors that the only ability they seemed to possess in acting was crying on cue. My God, it was awful. I didn't think I'd be able to make it through this movie. The story was choppy. It had no relevance to the rest of the story aside from the fact that, well, this guy's a douche, and this is why you should not hate him, I guess you could say. I don't want to expose too much, because again, you'd probably prefer to see the movie for yourself, but the very first portion of the movie, you have to make it past that for this film, and that's why it received the rating that I gave it. You have to make it past that. Once you hit the point where you're back to, I guess, kind of present day with the film, it redeems itself, and it just felt like this whole movie was too busy trying to get to the end, trying to get to that final conflict and the resolution as quick as possible. Again, the ending redeemed itself. There's not much more I could say to that. So, I guess the sole reason for seeing this movie would be to see the end of it. And the ending, as I said, was executed flawlessly. If they would have done this the whole movie, this movie would have been possibly one of the greatest of the new year. But they didn't. They didn't deliver on a lot of portions. They let a lot of stuff fall flat. They tried to make us care for characters that we really didn't want to care for. They threw in some important characters near the end. It was too late to make me care about more characters. It was too late. I just wanted to see what was going on with my main character and her allies. That's all I wanted to know about, but they decided to throw last-minute information on here. And that's the other problem I have with the movie, is that it just didn't know what it wanted to do. It didn't know what kind of ghosts it wanted. It didn't know what kind of conflicts it wanted. Did it want it to be a killer thriller movie, or did it want to be a paranormal poltergeist type movie? It didn't know that, because there's one portion in the film in which there is a brief, like, Strangers Purge-esque moment, and it totally threw me off balance from the rest of the film. And the fact that they were throwing in jump scares within this action sequence just made it even more choppy, and it just made me lose even more confidence in the film. But like I said, when the ending came along, it completely redeemed itself, and I guess that's the only reason I would say that if you want to, go ahead and see it. If you're a fan of the series, go see it. If for any other reason that you'd want to see it, I'd have to say just wait. Wait until it's at your local dollar show, or wait until the ticket prices have gone down, or wait until even the DVD or Blu-ray or 4K is in the cheaper section of your local Walmart or whatever have you. It's not the best Insidious film by any means. At least it is better than Chapter 3. I will say, it repaired what Chapter 3 did wrong, and I liked how it made a couple nods to previous entries in the franchise, and I like how they tied the stories together and got us hyped up for a movie that came out in 2010. I was very impressed with that, and they did a very good job of that, but they just did not deliver enough for me to say, you have to go see this movie. So, That's all, guys. I hope you enjoyed this movie review. And as always, stay rotten, everybody.